Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth. The Olympics may be over, but the effery it kicked off continues. Can you believe that there are actually people trying to defend this mess? And yes, it's the usual suspects, people whose profiles look like the UN, nothing but foreign flags. The Olympics decided that they were going to showcase breakdancing as an Olympic sport, but they couldn't give a satisfactory explanation as to why they felt the need to do it, though when you look at how things actually went down, you see exactly what it was. How do you have Lithuania and Japan being the finalists for Olympic medals for a form of art that began in the United States? At no point was breakdancing ever a competition. It was a form of partying, but that's the whole point. This is a cultural war that's taking place, a real one, not the phony ones that the Republicans try to argue about. The attempts to erase Black Americans has been ongoing for several generations now, and what we see happening at this point is supposed to be the culmination of it. Before you can eliminate a group of people openly, especially in a society that's supposed to be a liberal democracy, first, what you have to do is you have to lay the groundwork for how, we're not really getting rid of them. At worst, America's just one big dysfunctional family. Why? Look, we accept these people. Why? You even have people who are dancing just like them, though we don't give them any sort of credit for that. This is supposed to be a guilt-free genocide. And you start that process by laying claim to what these other people you're targeting have done and what they've come to mean to the world. It's no surprise at all that as foundational Black Americans have asserted themselves, we've seen this level of pushback. It's been growing. The antagonism has been intensifying. None of these groups has ever embraced Black culture. The people you saw pretending to be doing their breakdancing, their little clumsy, corny version of it, none of these people have ever embraced Black Americans at any point in history. They've all had some sort of anti-Black racial slur that they love to use. They do that stuff all the time. So if you're going to have these other groups out here pretending to be breakdancing, make sure you have a video screen or subtitles on the screen that show all of the anti-Black racial slurs that these particular individuals like to use. That's the part that needs to be said. Because we can show you chapter and verse how Black Americans are attacked on a daily basis by the very people who are sitting here trying to stand like us, who are trying to dance like us, trying to sing like us. That's because at the end of the day, originality cannot be duplicated. Everybody covets it. This is why the lie about Hispanics creating hip-hop is so insulting. Don't you know that from New York to New Mexico, from California to Miami, there's been all kinds of anti-Black racism practiced by these immigrants from Latin America, and they continue it when they immigrate to the U.S. When it comes to anti-Black racial slurs, they're leading the charge on that one. You can look at their home countries, and all of them have a number of characters, a number of TV shows, a number of social traditions based on open, blatant, egregious anti-Black racism. They are unapologetically anti-Black. They call us every name in the book. You have entire Black neighborhoods that routinely get attacked by these Latin American gangs. And nobody seems to want to make too much hay about it. I've talked about it on my channel. A number of Black media people have done so, and yet the white media pretends as if it doesn't go on, and these very groups, they pretend as if it doesn't go on either. When it comes time to go to the Olympics, or when it comes time to do some sort of high-profile media event, they need something that's actually going to be relevant. You can't dance salsa or tejano for the people in front of the camera. That ain't going to work. Not if you're trying to make a name for yourself. So they copy us, because everybody does. Yet they'll be the first ones to attack our music. Doesn't matter if it's in New York, DC, anywhere else. They call our music jungle music and all the rest of it. And yet we have people who are trying to say that these same antagonistic forces created the very Black music and art forms that they've traditionally attacked. And the white media made it a point to present Asians as being the so-called Olympic breaking stars. Have you seen how these Asian hair salons treat Black customers? Or how Ed Blum had the open, widespread support of various Asian groups when he mounted his phony college racial discrimination fraud lawsuits that he was putting out there? This is the reality. This is what's been going on. And as for Eastern Europeans, remember when immigrants from Poland and the Baltic states came to the U.S. and settled in places like New York, Chicago, Minnesota, Philadelphia, they were and remain some of the most anti-Black racists in the Midwest. And all these groups understand the rules of racism. And rule number 1 is you have to sign on to the devil's bargain to attack Black Americans. That is an absolute requisite for white supremacy because that is the foundation of the racial hierarchy that white supremacy put in place. And these other groups, they've signed on to it. Sure, they may not have a place at the top of the racial pyramid, but under white supremacy, they've been guaranteed that they won't be relegated to the bottom. It's an artificial, manufactured racial pyramid, but it's one that they depend on. Black culture is the most vibrant on the planet. Nothing else even comes close. Everyone imitates us because we're the only people who are truly comfortable in our own skin, literally. And we're the only ones who speak with our own voice, who have embraced ourselves. We're original. We have distinguished ourselves, and our cultural contributions have been acknowledged, however grudgingly, as being the best. And you don't have 10 different versions of the best. Other groups who try to identify as an ethnicity other than what they are, or by being a model minority, at the end of the day, they understand the reality. You know, it reminds me of a movie that I saw many years ago, The Count of Monte Cristo. It had Guy Pearce and Jim Caviezel in it. Guy Pearce played the part of some French nobleman, and Jim Caviezel was basically this lowly serf who got abused by Guy Pearce all the time. And at the beginning of the movie, Guy Pearce challenges his lowly serf servant, Jim Caviezel, to a fencing duel. He was actually getting ready to have the guy thrown in jail. And just before he does that, Jim Caviezel asked him, "Why do you hate me so much? What have I done that you hate me for?" And Guy Pearce's character says, "Because I'm not supposed to want to be you." Now, that's a work of fiction that speaks to a very real truth. This is the foundation of the love-hate relationship that all of these other groups have with Black Americans. Sure, they hate on us 24/7, they denigrate us, they question, in fact, impugn our very right to exist, and at the same time, because of the fact that we got the pulse, they also look and say, man, we can't outdo those guys, we can't duplicate what they've done. That's what it is, a love-hate relationship. They can't stand us, and at the same time, they wouldn't know what to do without us. This is what's going on here. Everyone uses us as their frame of reference for everything. Whenever they talk about any sort of issue of substance or style, they have to refer to us, because even under the worst oppression in human history, even under a centuries-long struggle, we have made more history than anyone. Opportunists don't make history. They can only swing on the coattails of those who do. But what they're doing at the Olympics is no laughing matter. Cultural appropriation is the first step to literal genocide. When the colonizers and those aligned with them lay claim to what you've done and what you are, then it gives them room to say that when they eliminate you, why, that was just some sort of misunderstanding. It certainly wasn't based in malice. Why, look at how much we like dancing the Dougie. That's what they're doing. That's how you carry out a genocide that you can then turn around and claim wasn't intentional. You can pretend to have clean hands. And if you want to see the other side of this equation, there was a white woman from Canada who did a pole vault in this year's Olympics, and then immediately afterwards, she stepped off the cushion and then started twerking on the turf. She got the bronze medal for her pole vault, not her twerking, though considering that breakdancing is now an Olympic sport, twerking probably isn't far behind. She did that in front of the entire world. And you know what? She didn't get her medal stripped from her. Nobody said, oh, we're deducting points for that. Nor was she denied the privilege to stand on the podium. And before we go any further, this woman also has an OnlyFans account. Gee, I'm so shocked. So this OnlyFans athlete, she decides to literally show her behind at the Olympics, and it's not a scandal. In fact, the white media is busy splaining and treating it as just, oh, how cute and transgressive she is, how naughty, or they're just ignoring it altogether. But what they're not doing is, they're not coming down on her. They're not demonizing her. They're not asking what's wrong with the Canadians or treating this as some sort of cultural pathology unique to those people. They're not doing that at all. They're not demanding that the Canadian Olympic Organization apologize or that they otherwise denounce her. They're not doing anything about this. Now, the white media tries to downplay and minimize Newman's display by calling it a celebration. That's how you know that the white media, as usual, they put their heads together to get their talking points straight. These guys coordinate all the time. This is another example. Oh, we're not going to be sitting here casting aspersions on it, saying that, oh, it was lewd, or it was otherwise indecent or unsportsmanlike. Instead, it's a celebration. It's a celebration. And yet, with all of these white media headlines and stories that they run about it, you notice how they don't have any pictures of her showing her wiggling her bony behind. Oh, they got pictures of her, but not showing her actually twerking. Now, what does that tell you? What that tells you is, yeah, they're going to try to sit here and whitewash it, but they're also not trying to glamorize it either. This is not necessarily something they want to become habit-forming. She did it. They couldn't cover it up. So it's a matter of, well, she's white, so we're not going to scandalize her for it. We only do that with black athletes. We only do that with black people. But we're also trying to contain how far this spreads, so we're going to go ahead and laud her in the headlines, but we're not necessarily trying to glamorize and promote more of this. She's white, and that being the case, her image must be protected. So apparently this is just good sportsmanship in this case. Now, can you imagine what would happen if the individual who did this was black? It would be wall-to-wall coverage, all kinds of phony outrage, treated as the Olympic equivalent of Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction. That's what it would be. So, while we got breakdancing on the one hand, ridiculous as that is, we also got twerking going on and being ignored. The Olympics sure have come a long way since the days of Tommy Smith and John Carlos. A long way down. But it just goes to show that under white supremacy, nothing happens in a vacuum. It also shows that anti-black racism, which is the foundation of white supremacy, is indeed global. It's not just the US pushing this. You have the entire international community who have united behind the goal of appropriating black culture. And everybody knows where that's going to lead. When you have a breakdancing competition and the finalists are Lithuanian and Japan, that's how you know the fix was in from the jump. Black athletes are the reason that people tune into the Olympics, specifically to see black American athletes. Not a brag, just a fact. What are the competitions in the Olympics that drive the most viewerships? Track, specifically running, and basketball. It's like the Academy Awards. There may be a ton of categories, but there's only two that people actually care about. Best Picture and Best Actor/Actress. Everything else is just there to fill time until you get to the next commercial. It's there to pad out the running time so they can stuff in more advertisements. But what we're seeing is white supremacy learned a long time ago how to monetize anti-black racism. And they've been practicing that ever since. Now, since nobody else is going to call this out except for us, we got to make sure that we continue to do so. Continue to keep this in people's minds. Don't let this just become some flash in the pan. Make sure that people understand that this mess is going on. You're going to be seeing more of it, but people can't understand it unless you let them know how long it's been going on, what its roots are, and what the intent is behind it. Because while you'll have the foreign flags and the domestic bootlicks who try to say, oh, it's just an Olympic competition, it's not that important, you and I better understand that when it comes to anti-black racism, it is definitely not a game. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Cheryl Tate, Gordon Gates, Joseph Isaiah, Nah-G95, and Calvin Bridges. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.